one of those things was this kind of embedded AI software that they have. I think it's just called Magic AI, but it's something you can use while you're in Canva. So some of our YouTube thummies have, backgrounds or characters in them that I've just created through using AI. And then I just started rooting around with it. And I recently, last week, when I was making the thumbnail for the show, realized that it said you can't do this again until the 1st of April now. And I thought, I didn't realize there was a limit because we've got a subscription. Yeah. But the limit was like 500 AI generated images in a month.
I never reached that.
No, and I just went down such a rabbit hole that they were like, you're banned until April from using this. Because I was literally, the couple of days where I woke up and I was like, I kind of want to use the text-to-image AI. It was a bit like when you first get it reminded me of when I was a kid and like Windows 95 came out and there were all these advanced computer games. Or like the first time I had used a bulletin board system or connected with my friends to play Duke Nukem 3D or something. It's that kind of excitement of I'm breaking into something that seems so novel. And maybe if I'd followed it along for those 18 months, it wouldn't seem that way. But I was just like, it had gone from producing these sort of pretty crummy, sometimes okay images to just making stuff that just blew my mind, and so quickly and so limitless that it became sort of intoxicating, because you go, okay, I'm going to give you something that I can barely, I couldn't think how to even create this image myself. I'd be like, there are two nuns and they're standing next to a Olympic-sized swimming pool that's full of giant worms.
So
or something.
just for anybody who's not maybe for Marie and Stephen, my parents, you basically just type a line of text into this thing. You tell it, this is the image that I want you to create, and you literally just type in. So maybe you could share some of your prompts with us, John.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm going to log in now and see what I've done, what sort of things I've done, and maybe try and... And so often what I'll do is I'll start with an image.
What sort of sins I've committed here.
Oh, God, it's so nutty. So like one of them that I can see here is a swimming pool, outdoor swimming pool.
Yeah.
In a kind of suburban setting. So you can see the pool, you can see this kind of house and garden in the background. Next to the pool, there are these, like I was saying, these giant worms.
What might you have typed in here?
Yeah, I might have typed in swimming pool full of giant worms, and it's just kind of done that. It's put them next to the swimming pool. And then I've said, in the swimming pool, there is a bearded Orthodox priest. And so it's done that. It's just put this man in the pool, and he's kind of looking out quizzically at these giant worms on the side of the pool. And then I've done a series of images because I wanted to check its kind of capacity to do pretty standard images, like a scary clown in a cornfield. So there's that kind of stuff. But then I was like, there's a farmer in a cornfield at night. He is also an axolotl and he's very hungry. So there's a guy in sort of farmer's overalls in this dark cornfield, but he's got like an axolotl face. It looks really unsettling. Then there's like an old woman lost in because I was getting into this kind of its capacity to produce haunting images. And one thing that people have started to comment on is its capacity to, because it doesn't make semantic connections in the same way that we do, but it gets very close. What you end up with is something that looks uncannily like an image from a dream that you might be able to remember. And that's what makes it so haunting, because there'll be something wrong with the image. Like somebody will have too many fingers, or their legs will be like out of place, or that, the proportions in the background will be warped, or their facial expression won't make any sense given the circumstances. But in those respects, it's very much like your brain, when you're asleep, trying to kind of recreate a narrative. And so it creates this real sort of skin crawly but fascinating uncanny valley situation. So another one of these images next to the axolotl farmer is this old woman who's looking sort of confused, walking through the desert. And on one of the dunes in the distance, there's what looks like a wave of blood, and then there's like a shadowy figure in the background, and it's just like, oh fuck, what is this? Very nightmarish. And I don't even know. I'm not sure now what I would have typed in to get that sort of prompt. But then I've done things like, here's one which is a bunch of Celtic warriors who are sort of like looking like pallbearers, except the pall that they're bearing is just a tray of cronuts. So that's quite a good one. And then I've done Salvador Dali serving crepes in a swamp, and it looks just extremely photorealistic. Then I've kind of got into historical figures. So I've done like a bunch with Winston Churchill where he's riding a baboon through the streets of London. And again, it just looks amazingly realistic. One where he's riding on a giant kangaroo in the outback. And then I did one where I said, instead of making it photorealistic, make it a lithograph of like a kind of medieval manuscript-looking image of Henry VIII riding a kangaroo into battle. And it's incredibly good. I mean, it looks like a sort of medieval version of a kangaroo with this guy in medieval garb on top of it in a battle scene. Then what have I got? This image of Henry Kissinger, who with a giant toad on his desk. It looks great. Coupled with Abraham Lincoln shaking hands with a giant tardigrade, which I like.
We'll have all these on the YouTube channel for anybody who wants to.
Yeah,
these will be coming up on screen. I just mine, John, I was just doing several versions of the same prompt to try and get the most disturbing images, which I just for weeks was just putting boy being fed by his mother plate of rats. And so I have like hundreds of photographs of like children being fed rats by their mother with various facial expressions, and they are great. I think the other thing that makes everything slightly more disturbing than you might otherwise think. I mean, it's one thing to have a human create a disturbing, dreamlike, nightmarish image. You go, oh yeah, that's from Barry's imagination. It's terrifying, but it's fine. It's from Barry. But now we have machines making us nightmare images that look like our nightmares are coming from machines.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, I was like a lot of new technologies. You feel this sense of excitement, but tinged with concern because you're like, what? This is not. I'm not sure this is a good thing. But partly because as I was using it, you just think, how novel is it that I can think of this thing that I can barely even put into words? It's such a weird thing because I was really testing it to create images of some very strange scenarios. And then it would do it, and then I'd add a layer of strangeness, And so I would have trouble even imagining what would come out. And then you type it, this weird thing, an Orthodox priest standing in a pool with giant worms, right? You might have that as a weird dream. And then seconds after you've typed it, it's there. It's an image. And I started to feel like, my mind was getting slightly, like there was something cognitively unhealthy about saying these very weird things and then seeing them immediately. It was like simulating having a kind of psychosis, it was so weird. And then I thought, like, if I was slightly stoned and doing this, I would freak myself out, like it's just a bit unsettling. And you kind of get addicted to this endless sense of possibility. You think, like, what's the weirdest thing I can come up with? And then I'm going to make it a bit weirder, and then I'm going to put it here. Of course,
the other thing is that at the moment there are all of these guardrails on this technology. Yeah. You can't just put in whatever you want at the moment, but undoubtedly
can't do.
And you know as well as I do that I tried to
find and manipulate, as I did with ChatGPT. I love finding those guardrails, particularly with this Magic AI. There was stuff around. There were obviously some guardrails around nudity and it's kind of vulgar images.
And celebrities often as well. Like if you try if you tell it that you want it to make you celebrities and trademarks, because I think you'd said to it like make a Mr. Peanut, and I think it even struggled with that probably because it
produced a weird version
because
off-brand
Mr. Peanut. But historically,
and I found it did dead celebrities.
Yeah, okay.
So I could say put Sophia Loren or Salvador Dali or whatever. But if I said, give me Mark Wahlberg getting eaten by a dragon, it would go, no, I'm not doing that. And then so there are ways that you can go like, okay, I want this person to be covered by splashes of red, and then it like just basically looks like blood. But if you tell it to do blood, it'll go no. Or you say, okay, I want a woman who is wearing translucent body paint or something, and maybe it'll give you something a bit closer to nudity than it otherwise would. This is why I got to the end of my 500 images and it said, get out, you have to have a break. It's like using a card to gamble at the casino, and then it goes, you've been doing this for 12 hours. Do you maybe speak to one of our staff, have a piece of pie and a coffee? So yeah, that was definitely a moment of wonder that I had, of the kind that I probably have not experienced from technology in years. I think.
And of course, John, the next step that's already here, but we don't have access to, but will very soon, they tell us, is OpenAI's Sora project, which does exactly what you're doing, but in video form.
Yeah. Oh, God, what kind of strange future awaits?
When are we going to get our hands on Sora? Have you seen that for anybody who hasn't seen, Sora by OpenAI is the equivalent of what John has just been talking about, but instead of still images, it's video images. So you can tell it, make me a 1-minute scene of a couple walking through a street in Kyoto and there's cherry blossoms everywhere and the camera pans in and sweeps down, and I want it to be in the style of Francis Ford Coppola from this particular film, and then it will go bleep, 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 blop, blop, bleep, and just give you something that looks photorealistic. And then you go, what have we done?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking when I was watching Poor Things, which I know you've also seen, and which has some wonderful design characteristics, that I wondered if some of the designs might have come from that kind of, technology, because obviously the possibilities in terms of producing concept art, etc., and people who enjoy our newsletter will know that I did a kind of experiment with this, with the Entre Placard or Purgatorium that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, just applying various different conceptual overlays to it. So you go like, put it in black and white in a sort of rural background and this kind of atmosphere and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you could just do that sort of stuff in seconds, where previously there was no alternative, I guess, but to get a human to do it.
I think a lot of people at the moment, I think, are under the illusion that even though this technology makes things a bit easier, I think people are still kind of under the illusion that, people will still want something that has a certain like realness to it. So I'm sure that all of these kind of industries that are currently threatened by this technology, like say, for example, special effects or just the film industry in general, or product photography or fashion photography, they think, people will want something real. I think what people don't understand is the cost effectiveness of this technology versus having to do something in the real world. And if you think about, for example, how much it would cost if you are a fashion brand, for example, and you are doing fashion photography, and perhaps you have to do things on location, or even just films. If you have to do anything on location, the amount of cost and logistics and time involved in like creating this environment for your film or product photography or fashion shoot, it's like an astronomical amount of manpower and money. Sometimes like if you're talking about sort of small scale things, it's like thousands of dollars. Then it gets up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're talking about films, it's like millions of dollars. So suddenly people are going to be having these discussions where they go, okay, well, we could spend millions of dollars and have this thing take us, months to years, or it could we could pay like a €15 a month subscription to Midjourney, and we could just have somebody do it in the computer right now for €15, and it's done. So obviously, this is what's going to happen. The pace of it is going to be the question. I think that the pace at which. I mean, I think I'm of the opinion. I mean, it's not entirely my opinion. I think a lot of this AI technology is actually starting to affect industries more right now than people are aware of. I think that there are a number of layoffs that are happening that are because people are starting to realize that they can use certain technologies to take over the roles that were previously occupied by real humans. I mean, it's the kind of thing that's obvious, but I think at the moment people still sort of think, if you're a bit of a lay person, if you're not in the tech world, I think people kind of think, this is kind of coming at some point. I don't think people realize that a lot of layoffs that are happening at the moment is because it is happening right now.
Yeah. And even if those companies, they might have a way of doing things that they're happy to just carry on with out of inertia, but as soon as they get the squeeze, if they think, we need to think about how we can save money, then they're going to make that transition because it's just blindingly obvious. And there might be a argument about, well, is this slightly worse than what a human is producing? I don't even know if you could say that it is. It's probably better. But even if you felt that way, you think, well, this is just a fraction of the cost. So, of course, we're going to do that. And I don't know, looking at some of these images, I'm almost scared of what I've been able to create as a slightly disturbed layperson.
What you won't be able to do, John, is you won't be able to make this podcast with these two fellows just talking back at one another. You're not going to get this authenticity from AI.
You can't. You can't get it, at least at this stage. Maybe in another 2 years, sure, but not right now.